Our speaker today is Jason Carson. And like I said, he and I joined early to work on tech stuff, and we're going to see that it'll work here in just a minute. But Jason and I met quite a while ago. I mean, a couple years ago, and Jason reached out and said, "Do you want to do breakfast?" And it was one of those things that, sure, I'll do breakfast. Who doesn't like breakfast? But we had this amazing talk, got to know each other really well, and we've been in touch ever since. Uh, in I guess informally we do he's got a great book club if you want to know how to run a book club and curious about Peak Perspectives book club. I try to do that as often as I can, but it's been a great opportunity to get to know him better. But again, let me introduce Jason. Jason is the founder of Catalytic Clarity. He'll talk a little bit about that today, but he's spent over 25 years partnering with leaders at all levels and organizations of all sizes across HR and strategic communications. His career includes time as, and get this list, HR Senior Director and Strategic Business Partner at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, as well as Microsoft, Johnson & Johnson, and Keen Footwear. That's a great resume, Jason. Last year, he stepped away from the corporate world to focus full-time on what he calls relational leadership, the kind of leadership that happens between people, not just inside your head. He's an IPEC certified coach and the creator of the Care Leadership Framework, which you will hear about today. Welcome, Jason. I'll turn the time over to you. Let's get your presentation up.
Well, thank you, Rod. And let's see, I'm sending you a request. It appears you need to make me a presenter.
I will. Yes, I made your last person the co-host. We'll make this one too.
There we go. Okay. And cross my fingers, Rod.
Something's happening. There we
Can you see
go.
that?
Yes, sir.
Ah, good. All right, Rod and I had a little difficulty before we started, so glad it worked this time. So thanks for the nice introduction, Rod. It's been a great last couple of years knowing Rod, and that first breakfast was I knew things were going to be different after that, and Rod and I have stayed in contact since then. It's been a wonderful relationship. So, welcome everyone. I want to thank Rod and Sunstone for having me today. I Rod did the heavy work. I don't have to do much introduction here, so that'll save me a minute. Um, Let me just add this. For for most of the last 25 years, I've supported leaders in all types of companies or leaders of all types rather, at all levels, from first time promoted manager all the way up to C-suite executives, in strategic partner and advisory roles, where I learned firsthand what great leadership looks like, and as well as where it tends to break down most often. So last year, as Rod said, I decided to break from the corporate world to focus my time exclusively on working with organizations and leaders on what I call relational leadership. And today we're going to talk about performance management specifically, but not the way you might be used to hearing about it. So I want to start with a short story. Last year, I worked with a manager who came to me with a concern and probably many of you have heard countless times in my career. She had an employee who had started less than 6 months earlier. She was afraid that she had made a bad hire, that the employee wasn't cut out for the role, and that she was going to have to let her go. So I told her that, look, if it turns out that that's the right thing to do, of course I'll support you in making that happen. But first, we need to have a very open and honest conversation. I'll tell you that after this conversation, we ended up taking a course of action that resulted in a dramatic course correction for the employee, who has since turned out to be one of the stronger members of this manager's team. Now, we all have superpowers. And I've often been told that I have an almost uncanny ability to share tough news with someone in such a way that they thank me and even sometimes hug me on the way out of the door. And that includes job eliminations, that includes PIPs, that includes all sorts of things you don't want to hear. And as you can imagine, there are a lot of ways that such a strength can be applied. For one, this strength has enabled me to help hundreds of managers work with their employees to improve performance, including in many situations when the manager assumed that their employee was beyond saving. So, what made the difference with the employee? I mentioned just a moment ago. So, that's what we're going to talk about today. But first, I have a question for you. What if most performance problems aren't actually about the employee at all, or at least not entirely? The experience I shared illustrates something I've seen countless times. Most performance problems have a leadership component. Not all of them, but most of them. And when we start there, everything changes. Now, this doesn't mean the employee is off the hook, and we'll get to that. But it does mean that the starting point matters a great deal. So before we go any farther, I want to call something out. When most managers say performance management, what they actually mean is performance correction. So fixing something that's gone wrong, writing someone up, having the hard conversation. But real and effective performance management, at least when we're managing actual humans, is mostly about helping things go right. And the correction part should only be a small part, the exception, not the rule. So today we're going to cover both, but I want to start where the biggest impact is, and that's on the proactive side. So when you think about it, a manager's job, when you strip everything else away, comes down to two things. One, delivering an aligned result, and two, enabling the success of your people. And if your people aren't performing, the first question shouldn't be what's wrong with them. It should be, am I doing these two things well? Am I delivering on an aligned result? And am I enabling my team's success? So before we go any further, I'm curious. Just drop a number in the chat. And I'm going to see, how do I see the chat? Uh, this. All right. Drop a number in the chat. What percentage of performance issues do you think, just your gut check, have a leadership component? Carol, 100%. Thanks for being here, Carol. 99, Gary, 87, 100, or 90, 95, 100, 25 to 30. All right, Mac. Thanks for being the outlier here. Appreciate you speaking up. Okay. All right. So thanks for chiming in. Interesting. Most people land, if you over time, I've seen in the 50 to 80 range, 50 to 80%. And the research actually supports that. So let me show you what I mean. Gallup has spent decades studying the connection between how leaders show up and how their teams perform. Their most recent meta-analysis, published in 24, looked at over 700 studies across 347 organizations and more than 3 million employees. And here's four numbers I want you to sit with. When leaders focus on engaging their employees and enabling their success, they see a 23% increase in profitability. For anyone wondering whether this stuff is actually important to business, there's your answer right there. They see up to a 51% reduction in turnover. Now, just think about what that means for a second, and think about what turnover costs you in terms of recruiting, onboarding, lost institutional knowledge, team disruption, and more. They see a 78% reduction in absenteeism. So when people feel supported, they actually want to show up to work. And that's not a small thing in itself. And they see a 70% increase in well-being. And that connects directly to why we're here today. So this isn't just about output. The people themselves are doing better. They're not just performing, they're thriving. So this isn't just soft stuff. This is hard business data that says that when leaders invest in their people's success, the numbers follow. So the question is this: how do you actually do that? What does enabling your people's success look like in practice? And that's where we're going to spend the rest of our time. So I want to take a minute and introduce you to the CARE leadership, relational leadership framework that Rod mentioned. And I found this to be helpful as a diagnostic lens for performance, among other things as well. So this framework is based on, first of all, 2 decades of observing and partnering with leaders at all levels. And it's grounded in the foundational principles of clarity, agency, relation, and empowerment. And think of these principles as 4 things your people need from you to perform at their best. So when performance breaks down, one or more of these is typically missing. So let me walk you through each one. First is clarity. Do they know what success actually looks like? Agency. Do they feel like they have a real ownership of their work? Space within which they can make and act on real, actual choices. Relation. Is the trust between you strong enough for honest, two-way dialogue? And empowerment. Are the systems and resources around them setting them up for success? Now, these aren't abstract leadership concepts. They're the 4 most common places I've seen things break down between a leader and their employees. So let's look at each one in the context of performance management, starting with clarity. So, quick question for the chat. What do you think are the most important things your employee needs clarity about to be successful in their roles? What do they need to be clear on? Let's toss them in the chat. Yeah, share expectations for sure. Rod, same thing. Priorities, good one. Expectations and outcomes. Yep. Measurables. Our mission and company direction, for sure. What they're going to be held accountable to. That's a great one, Kara. How they know they're successful. Yeah. How do you recognize that? What does that look like? So clarity, all of this is you're spot on. And clarity is not just about telling someone what to do. It's about making sure they genuinely understand what that success looks like, not just the tasks, but the priorities, the purpose behind the work, and how they'll know they're on track. So great job. So let's talk about a common trap, though, that many leaders fall into. They assume clarity exists just because they've communicated something once, or maybe even 2 or 3 times in an email, maybe in a meeting, and then they move on. But the communication isn't the same as understanding. I've heard it said, what I say is all about me. What you hear is all about you. Um, I love this quote from Russ Laraway, a friend and author of When They Win, You Win. He says, there's almost always a gap that exists between how clear the manager thinks they're being with the team and the clarity that's actually provided. So think about that. There's almost always a gap, not sometimes, almost always. So here's just a real quick litmus test that you can take. When was the last time? Yep, Carrie loved that. The greatest myth of communication is that it has taken place. George Bernard Shaw, great quote. So, when was the last time you asked one of your employees to tell you what their top priorities are, and then compared that to what you think their top priorities should be? If the lists don't match, simple, you have a clarity gap. And that gap isn't a performance problem, it's a leadership opportunity. Okay, so let's say clarity's there. They know what success looks like, what their biggest priorities are. The next question is then, do they feel like they actually own their work? So agency is about whether people feel that genuine ownership, not just responsibility, but ownership. And there's a big difference. Here's a pattern that I see all the time. A leader delegates a task, but then hovers over the employee. They review every email, they second guess their decisions, they insert themselves into meetings the employee should be owning. And then they're frustrated that their people don't take initiative or that they're not thinking like owners. And here's the secret: you can't control every aspect of how someone does their work and then be surprised when they stop trying to own it. So that's accountability without authority, and it's one of the most corrosive dynamics in any team. Real agency means defining the outcome and letting people figure out the path, coaching them when they get stuck so they can gain confidence in finding their own answers, not prescribing every step in advance. And when someone flags a problem, meet them where they are. Don't require your people to come to you with solutions before they feel safe raising the issue. That just shuts people down. Instead, help them build capability to work through problems, either on their own or together with other people. Over time, that's what builds real ownership, not just the performative kind where they're trying to prove something to you. So the gut check here is this: do your people feel safe raising problems with you early before they've figured out the answer? And what would change if they did feel that? That's a good just gut check to see if that relationship is strong enough that they're willing to come with you either when something's wrong or before they have an answer to a question. So we've got clarity, we've got agency, but none of this works if the relationship isn't strong enough to hold an honest conversation. That brings us to this next one, which is kind of alluded to already. Relation is about the quality of the connection between you and people you lead. So specifically, it's about whether that connection is strong enough to hold honest conversations. Most leaders I work with are really good people who genuinely care about their employees. And that's actually, ironically, where the problem starts. Kim Scott has a great term for this. She calls it ruinous empathy. And this is where you care so much about your employees that you avoid telling them the hard truth because you don't want to hurt them or damage the relationship. But that's where the irony lies, because the avoidance of those conversations is actually what damages the relationship. When you don't tell someone they're falling short, you're not protecting them. You're actually depriving them of the very information they need to succeed in their roles. So, how do you have the hard conversation then in a way that actually lands? And there are five things I've found make the biggest difference. We're going to go through those here. First, before you have the conversation, check yourself. If you're frustrated, that frustration is going to come through no matter how carefully you put words together. So wait until you can genuinely say that you're trying to help. Two, assume good faith. Most people want to do well, so start there. Three, be specific. You don't, or you need to communicate better doesn't actually help anyone. Better example might be in Tuesday's meeting when you interrupted the client twice, made them feel unheard. This gives someone something more specific that they can act on and work on. Yeah, Kara, you're spot on. Clear is kind. Thank you, Brene Brown. Four, everybody processes things differently. There is no one right way to process difficult news. So, based on their brain chemistry, their personal experiences, it's going to be uniquely different for each person. So, give them the space to process what you're telling them in the way that works for them. And then five, remember Maslow's hierarchy of needs. When someone hears critical feedback, it can feel like a threat to their security and their ability to provide for their basic needs and maybe even their family's basic needs. So don't be surprised or dismayed or disappointed by defensiveness. Expect it. It's a human response to a perceived threat. Don't take it personally. Just take it as information. Don't let it derail the conversation. Okay, so the last pillar is about the systems and support around your people. Empowerment is an easy one to overlook because it's not about you at all, actually. It's about the systems and infrastructure around your people. So here are four things to look at. One, the tools and the training. Does the employee have what they need? Not what you had when you started, but what the job actually requires now. Technology changes, processes change, expectations change. Are you making sure your people's toolkit is keeping up? Two, psychological safety. Oh, that didn't advance like I thought. There we go. Can your people tell you when something isn't working? Can they admit a mistake without fear? Because if they can't, you're never going to hear about problems until they become crises. You'll get blindsided. You'll wonder why people didn't say something sooner. But frankly, the answer is simple because they didn't feel safe to do so. Three, clearing the path. This is the one that separates good managers from great ones. Are you staying close enough to your people's work to see what's actually getting in their way? Bureaucratic bottlenecks, unclear cross-team dependencies, um, outdated processes, difficult stakeholder, whatever it is. Your job isn't to fix those things for them, but it is your job to stay close enough to spot the roadblocks and either help remove them or help your people respond to them more productively. And if you're too far from the work to see what's slowing someone down, you can't empower them. You're just thrown to the wolves and hoping for the best. And finally, development pathways. Oops, just found a typo. People perform better when today's effort connects to a future that they actually care about. So if someone can't see a path forward from where they are to where they want to be, their motivation is going to plateau and even suffer. And declining motivation, by the way, looks a lot like performance problems. So here's the gut check. If your best employee were suddenly put in this person's role, the person who's struggling, with the same resources and support, would they also struggle? If the answer is yes to that question, the problem might not be with the person at all. It might be with the system. All right. So 4 pillars. Oh, Era, thank you so much for that. Typos are apparently in right now, showing I didn't use AI. All right. Fair enough. Okay, so 4 pillars: clarity, agency, relation, and empowerment. So let's put this into the form of a really quick self-check to help you see clearly whether you've set your employee up for success. I call this the mirror moment. And this is where it all comes together. The principle is simple. Before you write someone else up, write yourself up first. So just think about that for a minute. Before you write someone else up, write up yourself. When you're facing a performance issue with someone on your team, before you go down the path of corrective action, take just 5 minutes and answer these questions honestly. And I can't over emphasize that last word. You have to answer these honestly or it's useless. So clarity, have I been genuinely clear about expectations? Not that I say something once or twice in a meeting, but have I actually made sure this person understands what success looks like? Agency, have I given them real ownership, space to make their own choices about how they're going to do the work? Or have I been controlling how they do their work? Relation, is our relationship strong enough that they can actually hear honest feedback from me? Or have I been avoiding the conversation? And I would say this is equally as important. Do they feel safe raising concerns with me and giving me feedback if something's getting in their way of succeeding, or if they're concerned about the expectation or the outcome or their workload or whatever that may be? And then 5 or 4, have I set them up with what they need to succeed? Have I given them the tools? Have I given them the training, the support, the clarity, all those things? If the honest answer to any of these is no, or I'm not sure, you might have some work to do. You do have some work to do before assuming that the performance problem is solely theirs. Rod, you're fine. Prefer to suspend myself with pay. Fair, fair. Me too. All right. So now I know what some of you might be thinking here at this point. Jason, that's great, but sometimes the person really is the problem. No, that's never true. Okay. Okay. I'm lying. Yes, of course that's true, and you're right. So let's talk about that. Here's the thing that makes this a complete approach, not just a naive one. When you've done the mirror work, when you've genuinely invested in clarity, agency, relation, and empowerment, and the issue still persists, then corrective action isn't just appropriate, it's more effective. And for three foundational reasons. One, the foundation is built. You've invested in the relationship. When you deliver the difficult feedback or initiate formal action, it lands differently because the person knows that on some level that you are and have been in their corner all along, and it's not just coming out of nowhere. Two, your case is concrete. You're not operating on vague feelings that someone isn't cutting it. You can point to specific expectations that you set, excuse me, specific support you provided, specific opportunities you've created. And if the situation needs to be documented, you're in a much stronger position at that point. And three, you can look in the mirror and feel at peace knowing that you've done your part. And that means take the next steps from a place of confidence and compassion rather than from guilt or frustration. Now, I want to close this section with something that I actually feel really passionate about. Allowing someone to flounder in a role where they can't or won't succeed is not kind and it's not compassionate. And this is where I've seen so more managers than I can count trip up is they don't want to be the bad person. They don't want to be the one that creates difficulty or sends the employee home crying or whatever it is because they delivered hard news. Sometimes the most caring thing you can do is tell someone the truth about where they stand. And if needed to help them find a path to something that's a better fit for them. That is the relational approach. It's just the harder end of it. And to go back to this point about caring, sometimes the most caring thing that you can do, and this is going to sound a little hard, it's to get over yourself. It's to get over the fear, the discomfort that you have of saying something hard. See, I'm going to take a second and just read it to Kara, have you ever worked with a leader who was harder on herself than she needed to be and needed to stop trying to get clear and move forward and just move forward? I worked with several leaders who really needed to move to corrective action, but just kept trying to improve processes and get clear on expectations instead of pulling the corrective action trigger. Kara, yes. Spot on. Yes. And this is where I, as a coach, lean in, right, with that leader. Because oftentimes what's standing in their way, you're spot on. It's not process. It's not lack of effort. It's right here. It's a thought pattern in their head saying, I haven't done enough, or I'm going to ruin this employee, not because this is the wrong thing to say, but because I'm going to do it wrong. And here's the thing. We learn through doing. Action is where growth exists. And sometimes you just need to step into that darkness a little bit and be willing to do the hard thing. And and this is my experience, folks. The words you say, and I say this from a place of knowledge. I have coached so many leaders in this place, and I say almost the exact same thing every time, and they always come back to me afterwards and say, "You were right." And it's this: the words you say matter far, far less than the state of your heart when you go into that presentation or that conversation. People feel what you feel. It comes through no matter what you say. And if you're stumbling over the words, if you're not doing it exactly right, but your heart is right and you care about that person and their success, they can tell. And I know not just because I've coached other leaders through it, but because I've done it myself. I've done it. I've gone in, I've stumbled all over the words, and I just own it. And I say, I'm sorry. I know I want to be saying this better, but what I really want you to know is this. I care about you. I care about your success. And because I care enough, I'm having this conversation and it's really hard. And that honestly, those conversations are where someone expresses that appreciation the most. and that care comes through. Thanks for that question, Kara. That's such an important one. Okay, so along those lines, I want to call something out because I've seen this a lot. Even when corrective action is the right call. If you don't now, this may sound contradictory to what I just said, but take all of this in the context of what I just said. It can still fail if you deliver it poorly. Okay. That's not to say you should overthink it. Just take a few minutes to take this care framework and apply it. And more importantly, when you act out of frustration instead of care, when the feedback is vague, when the employee doesn't feel they have any choice in how things play out, and when they feel abandoned to figure it out, how to recover on their own, they just don't hear the message. And again, they hear what's on the inside, not the words you're trying to say, and they feel attacked. So the mirror work doesn't just help you decide whether to act; it actually can change how you act, and it's to how that determines whether the person actually has a shot at turning things around. I know there's a few HR people on the call today, so let me just call out that when a manager comes to you having done this work, the mirror work, your job becomes so much easier. You're not just cleaning up a mess at that point, you're supporting a process that already starts with integrity. So, where do you start? I want to leave you with something specific today. Applying this framework to corrective action is based on the same basic questions. It's just applied a little bit differently. So, clarity, is your feedback specific enough to act on? This is where most corrective conversations fail. Vague feedback like you need to step it up or your attitude is a problem gives someone nothing to work with. Be concrete, as we talked about earlier. Anchor it to specific situations as much as you can, specific behaviors and specific impacts. On the agency front, even in correction, give them a role in the solution. Ask them what they think would help before you prescribe some kind of a solution. People commit to plans they helped create. And what you need from them is an energetic commitment, not a half-hearted one. If you hand them a performance improvement plan and that they had absolutely no say in, you're just at best you're setting up compliance, not real change. I want to just take a second and share a personal story here. There was a point in my career several years ago, it was about 10 years ago, where I was totally blind to the way that I was impacting one of our partner teams. And my manager called me into his office, and I was so blind to this, no joke. I thought he was calling me in to give me a promotion. And I walk in, and he looks at me and he says, Jason, we got to have a tough conversation right now. And immediately my heart starts pounding, as you can imagine. And he says, the way that you're interacting with this other team is making them feel like second class citizens. And I'm not okay with that. And it's at the point that I don't know if this is recoverable. But here's what I'm going to say. It's your choice. If you want to try and fix this, I am going to stand behind you 100%. I'll be your champion. I'll help however I can. And I'm telling you now, it's not going to be easy. But if you want to do that, I'll stand behind you. Likewise, if you want to take a soft exit, we'll do this as, in a positive way that is dignified and doesn't, kill your ego. I'm okay with that too, but I'm giving you the choice. So I want you to go home this weekend and I want you to think about this. And Monday morning, when you come back, let's have a conversation. And before I walked out, I said, dude, there's no question in my mind. I am mortified that they feel this way. I'm not, of course, I didn't do this on purpose. And I'm so grateful that you told me there's no way I'm leaving on this note. And there's no way I'm leaving with someone feeling like a second class citizen because of me. I'm going to fix this. And within 6 months, to make a long story short, I was recognized with a stock award from Limited Stock my manager had to offer, and he gave it to me. And that was in recognition of the way that I was able to turn it around. So I'm not telling you this story to shine a light on me. I'm doing it to show you that sometimes just giving your employee the choice What do you want to do with this? I will support you either way, is enough to light the spark and give them the energy they need to change, to turn that situation around. Okay. So next one, relation. If your employee knows you genuinely care about them, they can hear things from you that they couldn't hear from someone else. So lead with that care. The words, I'm bringing this up because your success matters to me, is not a script. It has to be true. You can't fake that. So really dig deep and find that place where you can genuinely express that care. And then empowerment. Don't just tell them what's wrong. Commit to helping them recover as long as they're putting in the effort. What resources, coaching, check-ins, or removal of barriers are you putting on the table in the conversation? Correction without support is just criticism, and criticism alone has never developed anybody. So the same framework that helps you prevent performance problems also helps you address them when prevention isn't enough. And that's what makes this a complete approach. So I want to leave you with something specific. This week, pick one person whose performance is concerning you. And before your next conversation with them, take 5 minutes and run through these four questions. Have I been clear? Am I making space for real ownership? Is our relationship strong enough for an honest conversation? And have I scaffolded their success? And am I willing to scaffold their success going forward? Then have the conversation. But here's the critical shift that I want to leave you with. Don't go in to talk about their failure. Go in to talk about how you can succeed together. So, hey, I've been thinking about how I can better support you. When we talk about what's working and what isn't, that's a much different conversation than your performance needs to improve. And frankly, it gets far better results. So I'll leave you with this. You don't have to lead alone. The best leaders aren't the ones that have all the answers. They're the ones with the courage to look in the mirror first and ask for help. Before we open up for questions, I want to ask you two questions. Actually, I want you to ask yourself two questions, and I want you to take a minute and just write down the answers. If you're comfortable, you can drop it in the chat. No pressure, you don't have to. If you do, no names or personally identifying information, please. Um, so here's the two questions. What is the one conversation you've been putting off? And two, what's one thing you're going to do to advance toward that conversation this week? I'm just going to pause and give you a minute to write that down. All right. Since I can't see everyone's faces, I'm going to ask, just throw a comment into the chat saying, I'm good. I've done it. Thanks, Mac. It was like mirror work. And I love that you started it yourself this weekend. Nicely done. Scheduled for today. Anessa, nice. Rod, way to go, man. Set goals for conversations with two people. Naturally, isn't it funny how when we stop and just open our minds to that, it's so how easily those conversations come to mind or those people come to mind. Yeah. Oh, true, Maria. There's always something to learn from others when you're honest with yourself. While I'm waiting for others to confirm here, Maria, you just reminded me of something that my mother taught me. I was raised by a therapist, and my mom always taught me there isn't a person on this earth you can't love if you take the time to get to know them. And I kind of taken a spin on that that served me so well throughout my career. If I approach every person I meet as someone that I can learn something from, even the people I have the hardest time with, it shifts the energy of the entire dynamic between us. All right, just a reminder, throw something in there into the comments if just to say I'm done. I got it. I know what I'm going to do. Yeah, Kara, spot on. Yeah, if you've done this work, you don't have to worry that you haven't done your part. That's the best part of this. All right, so excuse me. While the rest of you are kind of putting your finishing thoughts on what you're going to do, I want to just thank you all for your time, for your engagement, and advance my slide. Um, I'm going to hand it back to Rod to facilitate any Q&A or discussion. For my part, I'd love to hear what came up for you today, what resonated, what you disagree with, and any questions you might have. With that, thank you.
Jason, thank you. And let's do open it up for questions. There's been a good exchange in chat, but are there any things top of mind you'd like to ask Jason while we've got him?
I have a,
Thank you
Jason,
so much, Maria.
sorry.
Yeah.
Uh,
Go
Um,
ahead.
uh, Jason, thank you for the presentation. That was great. And I just wanted to add in, I put in the chat, but I'm also driving, so I thought it'd be easier. I agree with you 100%. If you come into and have the mindset of I'm going to learn something, whether it's how I want to be in the next meeting or how I don't want to be as a leader, et cetera, I think that's really a profound statement. And I just wanted to echo that. So thank you.
Awesome. Thanks you. Thank you. Is that Anessa?
That is I.
All right. Nice to meet you, Anessa. Thanks for that.
I have a question. Can you guys hear me okay? This is Carrie.
Hey, Carrie. No, you're not allowed to ask any questions. Sorry. Next. I'm
Oh,
kidding. I'm kidding. Carrie, for the rest of you, Carrie is one of my best friends. And we actually co-founded that book club that Rod mentioned earlier. So, Carrie, go ahead.
um, I will preface this question with I'm asking for a friend, but I
Of
literally,
course you are.
in
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
in this circumstance, I literally am asking for a friend. So, like throughout this whole presentation, I'm like, yeah, 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 yeah. Like I have a good friend who is really struggling with her leader in all of these areas. How would someone go about presenting this type of information to their leader in hopes of forming a better relationship? You know, like how, like I can certainly suggest to my friend, like, which I have actually, I'm like, you should talk to Jason. But like for someone that's, like, yes, I see all of this, but I need my boss to also see all of this. Do you have any tips for how to share that and get a leader on board with, thinking this way?
What what a fantastic question. So here's I mentioned, and I'm actually I'll quickly flash up my next slide, which is some recommended reading. Um, this is a question that came up that last book on the list there, You and We by Jim Farrell. Highly recommend that. In fact, that is the focus of our next book club discussion a week from tomorrow. So if you want information about that, just look on either Carrie or my profiles on LinkedIn, and you'll see a link to Peak Perspectives Book Club. This is a question that actually came up in a live presentation that I saw Jim field this question. And the answer is simple. The relational fabric between you and any other person, whether that's your employee, a peer, or your boss, is created by both of you. It's not one directional. And anytime either party does something different, it changes the fabric and the nature of that relationship. And so this same framework, the care framework, can be applied 360 degrees. So what I would suggest is the employee, there's probably a reel playing in the employee's head that sounds something like this. My manager's doing this to me. My manager's not doing their part. My manager could be so much better at XYZ. And while some of that may be true, it's a far less empowering approach than asking yourself, how is this, what part of this is 100% on me, right? And when you start there, it can reveal options that you didn't see before, right? And this framework, clarity, what have I done to create clarity with my manager about what I expect as an employee, or what's preventing me from being able to do my best work? Agency, am I putting all of it on my manager? Am I actually accepting some of that agency myself? Am I taking control of the things that I can do from where I am? Am I being a leader, right? From where I sit? Relation, we just talked about that. And then empowerment. You would be surprised, and maybe not, how far it can go with a manager for an employee to come to them and say, how can I help you? Right? I'm your employee, but I have things I can do too. I put some thought into this. Here's some things I can do to make this work better. And can we have a conversation about what's preventing me from being able to really be effective? I've put this thought in, and I'd like your support, or I'd like your partnership in figuring out how to succeed together. So, is it scary? Yeah, absolutely. Not gonna lie, I've been there myself, and that's a really hard conversation to have. But is it possible? Absolutely. And most of the time, a manager is going to respect an employee who takes ownership, accepts their agency, embraces that, and comes to them with a shared model mindset, right, of success. Does that help?
Yes, very much. Thank you.
Yeah. And I'll just throw a plug. Having someone to talk it through with before those conversations is super, super helpful. Having a coach, that you can go in a space where you don't have to perform, where you can just be, where you can be honest about what you're scared of, what you're struggling with, bouncing ideas for how to say things back and forth, that can unlock so much.
Hey, Jason, it's Allison, and thank you so much for today's presentation. As you were talking through Kia, my reflective moments were plentiful, for lack of better words. And I was just thinking out loud, like, do you see this having this type of care having great, I guess, impact on things that people struggle with on a day-to-day basis, like stigma, right? Raising your hand, saying that you don't know something, or I didn't understand something. That whole piece around psychological safety is what I'm kind of tapping into. And then I'm also wondering, like, how does this, and I think I do know, but it's like in your work, like, how have you seen this connect with leadership training and development, but also at a broader scale culture within organizations?
Yeah, such a great question. And I guess the first thing I would say is those observations actually preceded the creation of the framework in a structured way. It's my observation over 20 years of these principles playing out in all aspects of organizations that led me to put these thoughts together in a cohesive way. So absolutely seen it play out so many times. The thing I love about this framework is that it enables you to kind of meet someone exactly where they're at. So what I didn't talk about today is that you can look at these four pillars in any one of three dimensions: yourself, with others, and then organizationally. And so if you think about kind of the clarity, the agency, the relation, the empowerment as it applies to you alone, first and foremost, then we're talking like deep coaching opportunities. Do you know what you care about? Do you know what you aspire to? Do you know what your strengths and weaknesses are? Do you know what you expect of yourself? What others expect of you? All of those things. Do you see where your options are? Are you telling yourself stories in your mind that limit your choices? Or are you truly looking at all of them? Um, what how do you see yourself, and how is that impacting how you see others around you? Is such a deep, rich area for exploration. And have you set up the structure around yourself to be successful? And then just think about that applied at that next level, right? Have you been clear with others? Are you narrowing or constricting or expanding the space within which others can make choices? Are you investing in that relational connection between you and others? And are you setting them up for success? And then at an organizational level, right? Are you clear about your mission, your values, the norms, the culture? Are you creating systems that enable people to make choices for themselves and within their work? Are you rewarding and recognizing the right things that convey that that's important? Um, and et cetera. Are you creating the systems, the processes, the structures that enable people to succeed? So if you think about kind of that as a grid, it enables you to go kind of pinpoint exactly where the problems are and lean into those areas, and then leverage all the tools that we've heard about, the training around the emotional intelligence, highly effective communication, crucial conversations, the books you see on the screen, right? Radical candor, all of those things that we know and love, we can bring to bear in addressing those solutions. But if you look at them first, if you diagnose it through the lens of the care framework, and it enables you to be very, uh, very specific and surgical in solving the root causes of the problems, not just symptoms.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Feel free to reach out after this if you want to talk about that and further. I'd love to have that conversation.
Okay, thanks.
Any additional questions? If not, Jason, thank you very much. Appreciate this. Thanks to everyone else from joining our Connected Leadership webinar. So much to take away from this. Jason, an honor. We really appreciate what you've given us today.
Thanks so much, Rod. Appreciate the opportunity. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Hey, Rod, are we going to be sharing the slides?
Where this will be on YouTube.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right. Have a great rest of your week, everyone.